Oh man, I should put The Shining on the list.
Oh, which one are you gonna do? The movie or the TV series that came out?
I I only tried to watch the miniseries once and I didn't like the way it looked, but that was years and years ago, so I should probably give it
Fair.
another try. But the Kubrick film, super spooky.
Not a very faithful. Hey, we're recording this. This is BTS stuff right now, y'all. It's not very good adaptation. Also, like Jack Nicholson in that, I very easily believe that Jack Nicholson will go crazy. He looks like he's already crazy when the movie starts. So, like, the descent into the madness does not feel earned.
Dean is coming in hot tonight with these hot shining takes, and I'm excited to get into it. Dean Frank Eaton, welcome to the great and secret knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we were talking about what is speculative fiction.
Okay.
Speculative fiction is basically anything outside our current timeline that includes science fiction. I always gum up on alternative histories, fantasy, other universes, weird fiction, which is like format breaking, you know. I'm looking at House of Leaves. Apparently, it's like you have to read it physically because it does all kinds of weird stuff.
I got it. Actually, slight side note, a tangent, interesting note. Did you know that in the world of the Lord of the Rings, it is an alternate history? It is our prehistory.
Is that canonical?
It is indeed canonical. It's all this according. It's an alternate history where it like it's Earth, but like several centuries ago, basically. Uh, and their world, they would eventually lead to our world, but it's alternative history. So that's an interesting little like note there.
Calm down, JRR.
Yeah,
Don't get ahead of yourself.
I like how you called him by his first name and middle initials, but
I
didn't
can't
use the
remember
name.
what people called him because I only know the
T
initials.
Tolkien. He's most of his last name is Tolkien. Most people
Mr. Tolkien,
Mr.
settle
Tolkien.
down. Alternate history of the Earth, indeed. I've seen your maps. It's not Earth. That place does not exist on Earth.
I don't. Hey, look, it's not my.
JRR.
I two things are true at the same time. No, that doesn't make sense, and I know way too much about Lord of the Rings for someone who's not a fan about the Lord of the Rings. Uh,
Oh man, it's a great book series. Great film series.
the lore is super interesting. The books and movies are super boring.
Oh, come on. I mean, they can be. There can be some long, lingering shots of mountain ranges, but also there's other stuff going on.
Look, the first book spent 5 pages describing a leaf falling. Yo, I got ADHD. I need you to get that done in one.
Yeah, I skipped that bit. I just
All right.
skipped ahead to page 12 or whatever when the hobbits start talking.
And then in the movies, I tried watching them. I maybe it's I'm I it's been several years. Maybe I'm due for a rewatch. But every single movie that I tried watching in Lord of the Rings, I fell asleep in because it's just like 3.5 hours of beautiful shots in New Zealand.
Bro,
And
same.
they're, but it's just walking. It's just so much walking. It's so much walking.
But bro, that was me in the movie theater. I paid good money for this shit, and I got my 32-ounce drink and all my candy. Like I should have known this was gonna happen. But I had to pee an hour in, and then at hour
Right.
2, I'm asleep, and then I'm like, "Oh, this is exciting!" 20 minutes from the end.
I
Hmm.
I have not been able to finish any of the three movies because if I fall as I have a rule. If I fall asleep from being bored while watching your movie, I don't think it's a good movie.
You're dead to me. Get out of here,
I
Two Towers.
Two Towers, I've not seen Two Towers, Return of the King. I've not That's not true. I've seen them, I haven't finished them, excuse me. And of course, I saw Fellowship of the Ring. I will give you this, while it's not a faithful adaptation, I did watch The Hobbit, the first movie, and that was okay.
This isn't the one from the 70s. This is one from Peter Jackson.
Yeah, it was the Peter Jackson movie that was in like the mid 2010s, you know. I did watch that version of The Hobbit. Um
Yeah, it was
that's
kind of weird. It was too long.
that yeah. Three movies? Two at max, Peter Jackson, two at max.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
if you just went page by page, it could be a really long movie, but
mm,
really the most exciting bits you can go through pretty quickly.
right.
Like, do you really need to be with Bilbo and his little dagger or whatever for 12 hours on a mountain? Probably
I mean,
not. You probably don't need to trek all the way to the river city for 12 days or whatever.
one of the parts that happens early in the book and in the movie, I felt like was a little unnecessary, was the scenes with I think it's the ogres, where he's just there all night trying his best not to be killed, and then they get turned to stone when daybreak happens. Like, I don't
Yeah.
really know how does that advance the plot any?
Oh, no, that's what's so great about The Hobbit is it's a series of vignettes in this guy's life, and the vignettes are fun, but they don't really have anything to do with the other ones.
Okay, so
But
just
it's
like
like a lot of people's first book is like that, you know.
that's fair. Speaking of which, what we're talking about today, well, no, sorry, it's your intro. Your intro. Your intro. I need to respect your show.
Dean, I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Before we get on to why we came here, why don't you tell people your name and like where they could hear you or see you?
All right. My name is Dean Eaton. If you want to follow me on social medias, it's at Dean. I do make a show with Jeff here, with our friends Az and Tess. It's uh Omniversal Escapades. It is streaming every other Sunday on Twitch, twitch.tv/Omniversal Escapades. Plug, 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 plug. Where we play games like Dungeons and Dragons and Monster Week, and the settings change every season. Right now, we're going through kind of like a weird West, Cowboy West campaign. And we just finished like our one of our we're getting to the point of finishing one of the first major arcs. So you know, we're 10 episodes in, I believe, 9, 10, something like that. So like if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. You can also go to youtube.com/omniversal escapades, plug, 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 plug. Um
Man, that
that's my
show's great. We've done Fallout. We've
mhm.
done the Dad's game,
Oh yeah, Dead Labs is great.
Into the Dadlands. Yeah. Oh man. Oh,
uh
folks, we have so many good campaigns. It's not like one massive one. It's like a bunch of shorter ones. So it's not too daunting if you want to jump in anywhere.
yeah, so current season is going to go further than our last season. But if you kind of want to like dip in and meet the crew, in the first season, it's only like 10 episodes. If you really want, if you want to binge it, which we suggest, if you wanted to binge it, it can be done in like a day, to be honest. Each episode's a little long, about run roughly 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, you can binge it within a day. This current season, we're going a bit further episode wise, but in addition to that, we've done side games, and we've brought on special guests and a couple of one shots, stuff like that. So, come on in, watch us goof around and play games.
That's so cool. It was a great idea to put it together, and I always have fun. You're a good dungeon master, among
Oh,
many other things.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm always trying to make sure I'm working with my players because it's one we're cut out the dead air here. Uh, uh, I see us as co-storytellers, especially since it is a show. It is like our podcast and our Twitch show.
Mm.
So uh I might be slightly more restrictive on our regular table, but I feel like uh since we're all hosts of the show that I need to kind of yes and most of what you all do. And most of the time what everyone does is just perfect. So I don't have any issues with it. I trust you all, so it's been a fantastic like year and some odd months since we started. So I look forward to it every other Sunday.
Me too. Damn, it's fun. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for your suggestion. Oh, I should tell people Lindsay had to step back, uh so so we're not going to do Severance tonight. What are we doing, Dean? What did we watch for this here program?
Okay, so what we have watched is Terry Pratchett's The Color of Magic, the 2009 TV series. Specifically the 2009 TV series. There's been a lot of adaptations, but this one is done in like 3 episodes and covers most of the stuff from the first two books, according to Wikipedia. Um, Now, the reason why I said earlier that this was the first book is because The Color of Magic was Trey Pratchett's first released, like first released book. He would go on to do other things like Good Omens, if anyone's seen that on like Amazon as an example, uh, and and a lot of D&D modules. I don't know if people know that he wrote a lot of D&D modules as well. Yeah, he was
That's so
really a big.
cool. I had no idea.
Also, fun fact: did you ever play the game Elder Scrolls 4 or 3? No, yeah, 4 Oblivion.
Oh, yes.
He wrote a mod for Oblivion, not the code. He wrote the story for Oblivion mod.
That's fun.
Yeah, little fun trivia bit there for you. But Terry Pratchett released the book The Color of Magic, and so we're talking about the adaptation uh, that they released in the late 2000s.
Okay, so now we know you like Terry Pratchett. Let's step
Yes.
back a bit and tell me kind of how you got there. What was your first exposure to, like, was it science fiction? Was it fantasy? Was it something else? Mythology?
So, stepping into speculative fiction, I'm going to have to actually quote was referred, not quote, but refer to, excuse me, as the Disney Renaissance, because back in the 90s, there was a lot of like Disney movies like Aladdin, Lion King, and stuff like that. Um, so it got me into like animation, which led me to other things like other speculative fiction, such as Star Trek. My dad was a big Trekkie back in the day.
Hold on, wait,
Um,
wait, wait. You can't just jump past Aladdin.
Okay, yes. Also Aladdin, a fantasy. I mean, it's not Iran, but it's heavily implied to be Iran. Um,
Mm, mm.
because the country of Agrabah has never been real, but it's implied to be vaguely Middle Eastern, but shows things of like both Iran and Saudi Arabia kind of thing. So it's just kind of like generic Middle East, basically. Um, but like the
Yes.
re the reason I bring those up is because both Aladdin and Hercules were my were my like intro into the hero archetypes, right? Um,
Hell yeah.
yeah, they were great. Like Aladdin, he uses mind to win. He only picked up a sword once, and it wasn't really to fight, you know. And Hercules did, but he only did it basically in the defense of others. And while that's not the best adaptation of the story of Hercules and his 12 trials, it was a very entertaining one for a young Dean. Um, and that made me want to get into like superheroes and sci-fi and you know interesting books when I got older. I've been unfortunately a nerd for a very long time.
Oh, Dean. That's cute. Do you remember the first time you bought anything like that, like a book or a video or a video game?
So I did grow up kind of poor, so I didn't have a lot of options to buy things. But I remember getting in the first bit of like nerd media that I was not too ashamed to own, unless I hid it, was a copy of a Spawn comic book in like the late 2000s. No, early 2000s, excuse me. Um, and I still remember some of the pages in my head, as weird as that sounds,
Oh, Spawn
all
was
these
so
years.
cool.
Yeah, really. uh, and I think like an X-Men comic too. I could not tell you what the X-Men comic was about. Could not for the life of me, but I remember reading it. Um, but I grew up like a lot of the 90s kid watching shows like the 90s Spider-Man and uh, the Batman animated series and a whole bunch of the stuff. So like my intro into being a nerd and into speculative fiction was pretty engraved early on.
Were your folks into any of it?
My dad liked Star Trek.
Hell yeah.
He also enjoyed Star Wars, but not as much as Star Trek. Um, he would eventually come around in his like 40s and 50s to being like more into like Marvel and DC and sci-fi in general, but back in those days, it's basically just Star Trek. and and specifically TNG. Like Next Generation was my dad's show.
Oh man, that show was the shit.
It really is. Yeah.
I just watched a good one last night. It was where this guy like does some mind shit to Deanna Troy and she starts aging and getting all like aggro and horny and stuff. It was so cool.
And
I like it when they
oh,
let her act on that show.
oh yeah. Then unfortunately after that she would leave the show to start another career in acting. Fun fact, she was in the adaptation of Pet Cemetery. She played the mother, and that's her last, I think, her last known major role since then
In the movies.
in the movies. Yeah,
She was pretty funny in First Contact, but she didn't have much to do except to drink with Zephram Cochrane.
fair. Wait, I haven't seen that movie. She said she drank with Zephyr Copper.
Oh, dude,
No,
you
like
you have to see that movie. It's the best Star Trek movie. Well,
I
I
mean, I
mean, if you
know.
don't count Wrath of Khan or
Oh, really?
Undiscovered
That's that.
Country or the one with the whales.
I mean, the one the whales is actually the first Star. It was the first Star Trek movie I watched as a kid. So, like, special place in my heart for that one.
Yeah, I walked up to the movie theater to see that one.
Nice.
The Voyage Home.
To this day, like at the time, I did not know why the ship that they were on did not look like the Enterprise. I was like, that's not the Enterprise.
Because it was Klingon.
Yeah, and like I watched when I was a kid. This is how much of a nerd I was. I on Sci-Fi Channel, used to play in chronological order every episode of the original series, right? So I watched the original series, but did not watch the first like I think it's three movies. Yeah, it's Star Trek the movie, Wrath of Khan, uh,
The Search for Spock.
Search for Spock, thank you, and then the fourth one was about the whales. Um, and that one was just like, why do they? Why is there no Enterprise? Why are they in a Klingon warship? What is going on?
Man, I grew up with the original series too, man. I love those guys, Kirk and Bones and the almighty Spock. Spock just gets cooler the older you get, and now we have all these different iterations of Spock. Oh man.
Okay. I need to bring us back, but I do have a question for you. Because I will rant for hours. But who is your favorite non-Nimoy Spock?
It's got to be Ethan Peck on Discovery and Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
Um, the guy that played Siler, what's his name? He did the
Oh,
movies.
Zachary Quinto.
Yeah, he's pretty cool, but I feel like Ethan has like a he gets the sexiness of Spock,
Okay.
whereas Quinto is more the logic and, stuffiness.
I get you. I get you. I'll have to check it out. Because people have been praising his version of Spock so far.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I just I don't want to get Paramount my money.
Oh, oh yes. Oh God. These big companies and their streaming services. Well, uh, Color of Magic. How did you watch it?
I coincidentally watched it on Amazon Prime under their freebie program. I didn't give
Ah,
them money,
yeah.
but I didn't give them money, but there's advertisements, so they got money regardless.
I mean, they're gonna get you somehow, coming and going.
Exactly. Um, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I watched it too. Of course, there were ads because I pay the same amount I paid last year and get less.
Yeah, like every year we get less for the same amount or more.
Yay, business.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, on that fine streaming service, I also watched it. Let's see. You said 2009. I should pull up the IMDb. Hold on a minute.
I might be off by like a year. 2008, excuse me. It came out in 2008. This was before I knew about Terry Pratchett. I can't speak. Terry Pratchett, but I was already a fan of like British comedy and TV at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, I got uh integrated at a young age through Monty Python, so
Mm.
like it was all downhill from there.
Did you watch Flying Circus?
My introduction was through Holy Grail, but I did eventually watch Flying Circus. Yeah.
We are the Knights who say.
USA?
How about you?
What are the French doing here? Mind your own business.
I got better.
I I love that movie so much as a kid. I would eventually see the traveling version of Spamalot, which is
Mm,
fantastic.
that's great. Okay, well, I pulled up the IMDb page here.
Okay.
Directed by Vadim Jean. I don't know their work. Oh, I'm clicking on here. Director,
So,
producer, writer. Let's see.
yeah, he's been writing around. I just checked his filmography. It looks like he's been directing and producing since 1992.
Uh huh.
Um,
Jiminy
he's been doing this.
Glick in La La Wood. I've never heard
Hmm.
of that. Now I kind of want to see it. Oh, fun. So this is the most famous thing I've seen of Vadim's here. Terry Pratchett, of course, legendary novelist.
Hmm.
Our lead character, Rincewind, he's a wizard. We can go, I'll just keep this up. We can talk about them as they show up in the
All
order.
right, all good.
Um, Overall, how did you feel about this episode?
It was pretty good. So one thing I liked about it is that the cast is stacked. Like boy, it's a who's who of British actors. It had David Jason as Rincewind, Sean Astin as Twoflower. Sean Astin, by the way, plays Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings. That's a
Mm-hmm.
callback to a
Mm-hmm.
previous conversation. Tim Curry, the ever great Tim Curry, who uh, small another side tangent has one of my favorite scenes from a Red Faction game, where it's like, I'm gonna go to the one place.
Space.
Space. Yes, exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. um,
Oh
uh,
my
Br
God.
Brian Cox. I'm not the best, but I believe he played the father in the movie adaptation for. Oh, come on, Sound of Music. Excuse me. Um, Christopher Lee, Saruman himself, plays Death.
Oh yeah.
Jer
Oh yeah.
Jeremy Irons, and by the way, the author Terry Pratchett has a cameo in the opening scene as one of the cos astron. I'm so bad with names. As one of the people studying the size of the Discworld.
Oh yeah. We find out later they're called chulonauts
There you go.
or cholonauts. We'll figure it out. He's one of the astronaut guys. Oh man. So this is a funny show. It's got jokes, it's got bits, it's got wacky characters, and Tim Curry's in it in a strangely muted performance, I feel, for him.
Especially from this era, yeah.
I feel like he got upstaged by David Jason, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe if he's the top line on the call sheet, he like turns it up to 11. Because like he played the devil in Legend, and he was clearly the star in that one.
Oh, he played the devil in Legend, but he also played. Have you ever seen the movie Congo?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
It's got the gorilla or chimpanzee, whatever.
Yeah, it's got evil blue gorillas in it, and he played this Romanian, but the accent is so terrible. It sounds like Tim Curry with his British accent trying to do someone else's accent. It's bad, but in an entertaining kind of way.
Nice.
Um, please proceed. Sorry.
Congo. I guess Congo is technically speculative fiction because it has a device that lets you talk to a primate, like a lower primate.
Yeah, it would be considered like on the low end of sci-fi because even towards the end of the movie, they're like shooting lasers at gorillas and stuff.
Oh, yeah, we don't have lasers like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and they got the talking gorilla, and there's a bit of mysticism that goes with it. So that's kind of all over the place. The movie, like, calling it all over the place, is like an apt descriptor for the movie in general, to be honest.
The book is pretty much just as strange. I don't know if I could recommend it. Color of Magic. We start with a purple sky, and we get this narration. In a distant and secondhand set of dimensions, through wavering star mists, see the great Atuan. And there's a big ass turtle with 4 giant elephants on top of him, and this big rocky disc with like land masses and water on it and stuff, and it's called Discworld.
Yeah, I find this interesting because it does pull from a bunch of different cosmologies throughout our history. There is some that believe that the Earth is on the back of a giant turtle floating through space, and there has been some suggestions that we're on the back of elephants moving through it. So it's interesting that he just kind of lumped it together, flat disk the world basically.
Yeah, it's a fun idea.
But just
It's it,
true.
it requires slightly different physics from our universe, but
Well,
it's
it's because
fun.
our world is round. I don't know. I guess that's controversial. Our world is round.
Oh, I just meant in general space, the way it
I
works, it wouldn't keep an atmosphere on a half shell.
Oh yeah.
necessarily.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. But it's fun. I think he was leaning into the joke a little there because yeah.
Yeah, it's all
That's
jokes all the time with this guy.
exactly.
So there's a couple of astrozoologists in a ball, right? And they like drop it off the side of the thing and the is that did they prove that there's a giant turtle down there?
So the way the lore in the as explained in the show and in the book, because I did read the first few chapters, is that it was always believed that the world was on the back of elephants, which is on the back of a turtle. But the astrozoologists sent a like metal pod off the side of the disc to confirm that. And at that moment, it was confirmed that that's what happened there.
And some new brainiac wants to spend a whole bunch of time and effort on finding out the sex of the turtle. And I noticed in
Yes.
that scene, somebody's like, why do we want to do that?
Yeah, I was like, what does that matter? I was like, that's a good question that anyone should be asking in that scenario. Like, what does it matter?
What does it matter? Indeed. Um, does God have a dick? I mean, does it? Who wants to know?
That's not where I
What would
thought
he
this was
do with
gonna
it?
go.
Rub up against planets? I mean,
Look, if there is a God in the world, I doubt they have a gender because what do they need a gender for? It's not like the Greek gods where they just kind of fluidly went back and forth to whatever felt suit their needs. Like if you're an Abrahamic God, then you just kind of do whatever you want.
yeah, I mean, if you're everything, it's kind of hard to fuck. Like
Yeah,
you need another thing to put your god dick in.
yeah. That's why.
I'm sorry, I didn't tell you this was that kind of show.
Apparently, it's that kind of show. That's content warning. I'm good. I'm good.
Everybody that loves Lindsey and our like very intelligent reasoned discourse is like, what the fuck happened to this show?
I am breaking down the show a little.
Oh no, no. This is like me, like the manacles come off and I'm like stretching my wrists,
Gotcha.
shooting lightning bolts.
Don't worry,
Uh,
listener. I will say more smart things in a dumb way as the episode proceeds.
yes, yes, undoubtedly. So now we go into what looks like I don't know, a Renaissance era town, like a seaport. There's boats and ships and things, and it says it's called Ankh Morpork.
Yep. Way to lean into those fantasy names, Terry.
Uh huh. And then friggin' Sean Astin pops out, dressed not like the locals, but like a tourist from the 2000s.
It's an interesting note about that is that when Sean Astin's character was first introduced by the narrator, who I'm suddenly forgetting the name of,
The narrator is Brian Cox, the
thank
guy
you.
from Succession, among
Yeah.
other things.
As it's as the narration Brian Cox is doing is happening, it mentions that Sean Astin's character is the world's first tourist, like ever. And he does look like he's going on vacation in like the Bahamas. With
Yeah, he's got a summery, like a button-up shirt.
like a button-up flowery shirt, one of those like bucket hats, long socks that go up to like nearly the knee.
Mm.
Yeah. So he's like if you imagine annoying tourist in a heavily like tourist area, just imagine that in a medieval kingdom.
Yeah. So this was a little confusing because I'm like, oh, so they got modern folks, but they also got these old-timey folks. They must not get together very often. And sure enough, it's a fish out of water situation.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the way the city looked as we like rise up and see the whole vista. Pretty good CGI, like, and then it rises up to this tower. And then when we zoom in on the top of the tower, I believe it's called the Tower of Art.
It is the unknown tower. I'm forgetting the name
Oh, the
suddenly.
Unseen University.
The Unseen University. Yeah, there you go. Very fantastic.
So that last tower is called the Tower of Art, and it's like really pretty. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's a painting or a model or a CGI thing, but it's pretty good. We meet the 8 heads of the Order of Wizardry, and the narrator is telling us that they're always trying to kill each other to rise up to the top. The top of the heap is called the Arch Chancellor. And then Tim Curry is talking to somebody, maybe the Arch Chancellor, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the guy whose coffin we're moving in this funeral service. He was probably killed by one of us." And he goes, "When a wizard is tired of looking for broken glass in his dinner, he's tired of life." I'm just speculating, obviously.
Yeah. So first, I'm just going to say this: if you're going to build an entire body of government based off of your ability to do, I don't know, one thing, maybe don't let assassination be a right of succession. I'm just saying,
It's not very
it
efficient. It must
it's not
take decades to train up a good wizard.
exactly, and it all gets fixed by, I mean, not fixed, it all gets changed just by, someone placing a well-placed knife or something.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's frowned upon, so it doesn't happen all that often. But every once in a while, you get a murderer type like this guy.
Yeah, it seemed like it because throughout, without spoiling too much, throughout the series, um, it's not even though some of the witches know what's happening, they don't just outright say that, he's killing people. So
Oh yeah, like it's not polite to discuss the details.
exactly.
So that's old Roomlet that died, and they're starting the speak, the Arch Chancellor or whatever, starting to do the sermon or whatever it is, and Rincewind shows up. He's this guy with this goofy white beard, and that's David Jason.
Hmm.
I don't know if I know his other work. I think it's mostly Danger Mouse. I saw that a few times.
Uh, he's also worked with people like Terry Jones, apparently, and Eric Idle. Oh, good
That's
to know.
fun.
For context of the Monty Python sword. That's for the listeners at home. Or if you're in your car, listening to it in your car.
He was in something called Hogfather, which I'm just fascinated by that name.
Yeah, Terry Pratchett has a way of writing interesting titles. Yeah.
The Wind in the Willows, A Tale of Two Toads.
Mm,
He's definitely a comic actor.
yeah. I mean, it shows. His timing is pretty good in this.
Yeah. Let's see. I did notice pretty early on that it's kind of a sausage fest of a movie or TV show.
Yeah. Most without spoiling too much, most of the women are just kind of a part of the set piece. They're not really
Yeah.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah, they just
Um,
pop up here and there.
which is not the best, but I'm going to give Pratchett one thing. This was the 80s, and it's a time, we eventually will learn to, you know, deconstruct how we tell stories and how we do that, make our art, that kind of thing.
I mean, if you didn't know better, you'd think the early 80s was like there was a shortage of female actors at the time.
Right.
It's just so few of them, especially in genre television.
Oh yeah.
Mm. Let's see. Rincewind. Oh, so they have a meeting with the Arch Chancellor and Tim Curry, who's named Mr. Tryman.
Hmm.
And they're firing Rincewind because he hasn't even become a level 1 wizard, and he's been there 40 years.
Yeah.
So that's an intriguing mystery. How do they let somebody keep studying for 40 years? Why would they do that?
Oh, I'll have to keep going to find out.
Then we see an assassination of an old guy named something Narrowbolt. And
Yeah, I'm
the
not gonna blame you for not
shoes.
be. Yeah, that's the other part. Like, whenever Trymon attacks people, he steals their shoes and their hat, which I guess is like a mark of their rank, basically. At least it seems to be implied that way. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cute little device. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's
it really
cute.
doesn't. Once again, don't base your body of government off of things like assassination, right,
Or headwear and footwear.
or headwear. Yeah, I don't think, as much as I don't want the new president to be in place, I don't think that Biden's going to give him his old shoes and that's going to make him the new president. You know,
I bet the first thing that Mr. Trump does is take his shoes off and like just start stinking up the place.
oh, without a doubt. Um, so yeah, he takes his shoes and his hat. Y'all, I, I mean, if this helps any, this is a few days after the election, so like it's still fresh in the minds. Uh, I don't want to get too political in this non-political podcast, but
My God.
maybe one of these days I'll start a political podcast and it won't be, you know, it'll be just me complaining for half an hour or something.
Well, I think anybody that listens to something I'm doing should know that I'm pissed off pretty much all the time. uh, I
I
really
know
want to
that.
be a Democrat, but they're so fucking disappointing most of the time. But I'm definitely not a Republican.
Um,
Yeah.
Size of depression. um,
15 million people that voted in 2020 chose not to vote. That's an absurd number of voters not voting.
the next day after we got the results, like I woke up like 6 in the morning because I had to go to work, and I saw the results because it was literally the first thing I did. Uh, after I saw that and saw things were going, I was like, man, this is reminding me of 2016 where people were just very apathetic about voting. Uh,
Yeah.
like it just seemed like there's a lot of apathy, and I was getting that again, a few days ago.
You want to know what's even more embarrassing as a nation?
Hmm.
That it was worse than it was in 2016. I mean, it's just, oh God. Any who's'll be
I
back
will say,
to our show.
I will say, I did for the listeners, I did respond to Jeff, but we're on a video call, so it's one of those like whelp faces, just my face just goes whelp. What else can you do? Anyway, let's continue.
Yes, you carry on goofing on the man until he comes to get you,
Oh man, I got
or
so
your
many jokes.
job puts you in your grave early. I'm proud to be an American. Where were we? Oh, they're interesting architecture here at the wizard's house. Rincewind is thrown out, and the only person outside that door is this strange lady making like wizardy charms at a
Yeah.
little booth. Yeah. I really want to know what that lady's deal is, but we just never get it.
It was an interesting set character that had literally nothing to do with the plot, but it was just like, hey, why do you have all that stuff next to a wizard academy? What are these things?
They were like, we have some empty space in this shot. Would you see if one of those women is in the next studio over? Just bring in a woman.
Yeah, we'll just throw some stuff from like a bunch of other movies onto the set. She could just twiddle on something.
I swear she was making one of those scary doll things from the Blair Witch Project that hang out of the trees. Fuck those
Who knows?
things.
Fuck those things.
The Blair Witch Project can get fucked.
Yeah,
Well, more like the Blair Witch can get fucked. The show, the movie is good,
yeah.
but too scary.
I mean, I'll be honest. I got another side tangent, I guess. I watched the Halloween series as a kid, so I have just
Oh,
become,
damn.
yeah, I've become desensitized to basically every horror since then. So,
I think my parents might have turned Halloween off the first time because it was so scary.
my parents worked for full-time jobs, and
You have
access
videos
to
at home?
I had access to AMC. So,
Hell yeah. Now, we did get Halloween 3 on video disc one time around Halloween.
mhm.
That shit was terrifying. It was like more of an anthology show than a Michael Myers thing. But there were these
That
masks that would eat the kids' faces. That scarred me for life.
Oh, and you know, the reason why I felt like an anthology is because after the second movie, that's what they wanted Halloween to be, was an anthology series where each movie was its own
Oh,
story that takes place around Halloween. But the third movie was panned so hard for not being a continuation of the Michael Myers story. That's why they returned to it in four.
interesting.
Little movie factoid for your audience there.
Yeah, it's funny. Anthology series, people like the idea of them, but they also like to see their friends that they get to see every week. So if you
Yeah.
only have one or two people that are in every show or none, it's a little like hard to. This is how I feel about series that have a time skip.
Hmm.
Like, because you're like, oh, those aren't my people anymore because they got old or whatever. Or
I
who's these new
think,
kids? I don't like them.
right. I think if you're going to do an anthology series, you have to be upfront that it's an anthology series. Like Twilight Zone, one of the best series from the 60s in general. Very progressive for its time too. And you know, it was pitched as an anthology. Every episode was its own story, right? There rarely be some can rarely be some connection to another episode. Outer Limits was I mean the 60s version was trash, but occasionally they would do two-part episodes. Uh, Tales from the Crypt was a horror anthology series. Which scared the shit out of me as a kid because the Gravekeeper. Um, yeah, it scared the crap out of me as a kid. I could not watch that. I You mentioned your trauma. That's my trauma right there.
The one that
I
really
just
fucked me up was Nightmare on Elm Street. It was the first time I saw an R-rated movie away from my house without any adult supervision. And I also
I
had like this
gotcha.
weird attack of like what might have been meningitis. I don't know. My neck froze up. And the dumb kid who I was staying with, the only blanket he had for me was a friggin' Afghan in this like cold house. Like, forget about it. He was a bad host. We're not friends anymore.
I'm just saying, like at 30 years later, we're the best of buds, or something. They'd be like, all right.
No, no. Hmm.
I I'm done tangenting, by the way. Let's get back to the color magic.
Let's do
Hey,
it.
this is a less intellectual version of what I think you do in the past. So
We made it through two of my notes before we made a giant tangent. Let's see if we can get
okay,
through two more. Rincewind, he leaves Unseen University, and it's like stirring up this magic thing. It's like it's all purple light and chains. We see some bums stealing food in a market, and then I ask, why is Sean Astin so modern? While these clods are like medieval or Renaissance. Rincewind, it looks like he's trying to commit suicide by jumping into the water. But then he gets
yep.
like his eyes all fill up with purple juice, and he somehow gets saved by appearing inside a cargo elevator or something with nets and
Mhm.
things.
Yep, he is saved at the last moment, and then that's for the first time we get to see the character that is probably one of the most popular characters throughout the Discworld series, and that's Death.
Death, that's right. Death wanders up, and he says some stuff. And he is played by Christopher Lee.
Saruman himself.
Yeah, he's got some funny jokes. Very dry.
Very dry.
Sean Astin takes pity on a poor blind beggar and wants to give him some money, but all his money's in a giant chest. And he opens it up, and it's almost completely these giant, thick gold coins, and then
Mhm.
like a journal or something on top. And everybody in the goddamn dock just zeroes in on this gold and is like, what?
Right.
Including Rincewind, who's like, I got to get me some of that, and goes to follow.
So he actually introduces himself to the bum in what we would describe as maybe like broken English, but it's translated to the language that they speak at the city. He is from somewhere else, and he starts speaking their language in a broken like version of it. It's actually pretty funny because it's awkward, and I would also imagine a pain in the neck to try and write a lot of. Uh,
Yeah, they swish their way out of it pretty quickly with some. Well, Rincewind is a translator, so that helps.
yeah,
Oh, and also we find out. We'll get into it, but we find out the guy can speak the local
yeah.
language. Um, let's see. So I'm like, Rincewind notices that trunk. He thinks it's made out of sapient pear wood, which is like
Mhm.
redonkulously expensive. He runs after it, and this is now when I realize that his robe is so janky. Like it's homemade, but homemade by somebody who is not a well trained or experienced tailor.
You could tell because on his hat it spells wizard on the top, but incorrectly. I think there's two Z's on it.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like in not even embroidery. There's like chunks of like metal that were sewn in. It just says wizard on the top of his hat. It's a fantastic joke. Because he is, an incompetent wizard, so it's just really funny.
And then they go into the bar, and this is when I noticed our director is like having a bit of a fun time because somebody throws a dagger or something, and there's this fun whip pan that like follows it whoosh, to where it hits, and it really reminded me of the 2000s when like that technology was finally like a little more affordable in the late 2000s,
Right.
where they could matrix eyes shots or move cameras faster than they could before. I think of it as kind of what's the what's that show for kids that's like repurposed Japanese live action fighting? Mighty Morphin
Oh,
Power
Power
Rangers.
Ranger. Yeah. Also the big bad Beetleborgs.
There
Yes.
you go. There you go. And I think the first time I saw one of those was in a kung fu movie, like a Jackie Chan or a Chow Yun Fat or something. Knife flying through the air. Let's see. I thought the tavern set has good depth. It looks a tiny bit stagey, but just like it's clearly a set, but it has all these layers. It's really pretty. Rincewind can speak Trob, which I don't know if that's an intermediate language or if that's Sean Astin's language at home. I'm not sure. And Rincewind tells him that he can help him stay alive, that if he doesn't have a good guide, somebody will knife him.
And it says, if you stay the night here, you'll be knifed or poisoned before the night's over.
Yeah. Yeah. So we find out he's from Best Pelargic, the best seaport in the Agatean Empire. So they have a little chat, and then the innkeeper was eavesdropping, and he's like, "What is this guy's deal?" He whispers to Rincewind, and he says he's a tourist. Huh? What's that mean then? I think it means idiot.
Yeah. That was a pretty funny joke.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of fun at the tourist expense. So now all the hive of scum and villainy finds out the tourist has gold. We get a quick cut over to this guy named Emor the Thief finding out about this thing. And then the tourist says what he wants to see. And he's listing off like fun things. And then he's like, and the whore pits and the slave markets. And I'm like, and he keeps going. And I'm like, hold on. Let me rewind.
Right. He is way too enthusiastic. Yeah. He's way too enthusiastic about that too. All about basically everything. Like, boy, howdy.
In Agatea, we put our whores underground.
The underground whores. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. We keep them away from the sun. Oh, shit. Then we cut over to Jeremy Irons, the patrician, who is chewing the scenery.
As Jeremy Irons does.
And he's in this big, great hall. And he's got this fancy outfit on. And I noticed he's got this like kind of fake widow's peak. Sort of like faux hawked down over his forehead. And he's got kind of a speech impediment. And I can't remember what he's doing in that scene. Do you remember?
Not the top of my head. I know he would eventually talk to Rincewind.
Yeah, maybe we're just getting to know him in this scene. And then we cut over to Zlorf, the assassin. I didn't get his name right. So the Assassins Guild comes into the bar. The thieves are there, and then these dwarves come in.
Well, let me break down the scene just a little bit because it's all kind of funny and there's some decent jokes here.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull up the episode so I can see what's going on here.
The Thieves Guild comes in, and they're trying to rob the tourist known as Twoflower. That's his name. The tourist's name is Twoflower. They're gonna rob him basically, and the Assassins Guild comes in. At this point, they're all like throwing knives at Twoflower. The Assassins Guilds come in, and the Thieves Guild looks at him and says, looks at the Assassins Guild leader and says, you know the rules. You don't rob and I don't kill. So the head of the Assassin's Guild sits next to the head of the Thieves Guild and says, all right, how about I kill him and you rob him? Which is a pretty fun joke, honestly. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the dwarves come in, saving Twoflowers from the Assassin's Guild.
And it turns out that this is like a suddenly brand new mercenary type situation.
A merchant's guild.
Yeah, Bruff of the Guild of Merchants and Traders. And so he wants to make money off of the tourists somehow.
What I loved about that is like, and how long has this esteemed guild been around? It's like since this afternoon.
Yes. Oh, this bar is funny.
And he's like, I'm here to protect. I'm in charge of I'm the vice president in charge of tourism. And they asked him what tourism was. And he's like, we're still figuring that out.
Yeah, so Rincewind has already run away by the time they all show up.
Okay, so that would explain that then. To dial back just a little bit, the reason why we meet Jeremy Irons' character is because Two Flowers offers Rincewind to be his guide and will pay him 2 gold a day.
And he pays him up front.
For 3 or 4 days, something like that. And the reason why this is so important is in a previous scene, the bartender took some of the coins that he had paid with, went to an alchemist, and the alchemist said, well, our gold that we have has maybe 10% gold on it. This is pure gold. So they found out that the money that two flowers is paying with is pure gold. So he gets paid, going back forward just a little bit more. Rincewind, after being paid to be a guide, immediately like buys a horse and then tries to flee before the horse is taken down off camera, luckily, by the guards, and he's dragged back to the I don't know his position, to Jeremy Irons. And Jeremy Irons,
the patrician. He seems to be like the mayor.
That seems to be the situation, yeah. And the patrician says, we're gonna kill you unless you protect why do I keep saying two feathers? Two flowers.
Twoflower, yeah.
Two flowers. Yeah, he said it because like the empire he's from is very rich and strong and powerful, and if he doesn't, it could cause an incident. So he's like, protect him at all costs, or I will make your death painful. And then that's why we're at the scene why Rincewind is gone, and all the three guilds have coalesced into one area.
Yeah, Zlorf and Bruff and that other guy, Emor. Oh, so it looks like they're gonna kill him, and he pulls up what looks like a camera flash thing, like a flash bulb from the 50s or whatever.
Right.
And it flashes, and everybody starts fighting each other, and somebody goes, "It's magic!"
Which is a great joke. The whole scene was fantastic in a nonsensical kind of way. If you have this in your notes, I apologize. But at one point, he's like taking pictures, like say cheese, and they all stop the fight to look at the camera and smile. This happens a few times in the scene. It was a great joke.
Hell yeah. So then Rincewind runs away and goes to the patrician, and the patrician tells him the only way you're not going to die is if you protect Rincewind with your life, because if you don't, the entire Agatean fleet's going to come over, and they're going to want to know who killed their guy, and it'll be you.
I got out of order, so sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. It cuts back and forth. Let's see. So Homeboy tries to run again during the bar fight, and the trunk won't let him escape. It's like grabbing his shirt and stuff, dragging him back.
Great physical gag. Great physical gag. Because he's trying to, it's the classic like trying to run, the feet are moving but they're not moving forward because they're snagged on something. It's very cartoony.
Yeah, it definitely has some cartoonish business. Let's see. Next time we're at the bar, the tourist is taking pictures and just loving this bar fight, and Rincewind returns and sidles up next to him. At some point, he convinces him to leave the bar fight. I can't remember how. Um, and the guy's like, do some magic, because there's somebody standing in their way. And so he, like, I don't know, kind of he distracts him with some hand motions and then kicks the guy in the nards. And he goes down. And they go out, and the guy's like, was that magic? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good scene.
Then he wants to take pictures. The tourist wants to take pictures. And so he shows our fella how to do the pictures. And then he wants to, like, drag more people into the pictures. And this little imp pops out of the back of the camera while Rincewind is looking at it. And he's like, he used up all the red with all the dwarf blood, so now it's all monochrome.
Yeah. I also enjoyed about that is they at one point in that scene he was like, I want to meet, I want to do this, I want to do that. I want to meet Cohen the Barbarian, which I got to laugh at. I got a nice little Conan joke there. I'm there with you on that. That was funny.
And Rincewind just is like, yeah, that guy behind you, that's Cohen.
Yeah, that's Cohen. Yeah, sure.
Why not? Let's see. Death comes back. I'm not sure the context, but he's popping in every so often. And then the tourist tells Rincewind how insurance works. Rincewind is like, oh, so it's kind of like a bet, huh? And he's like, oh, it's when the guy's hotel blows up. The inn, like, gets lit on fire or something, and it's going up.
They actually allude to this in a previous scene. In a previous scene, you see a gold piece being exchanged for a written policy for insurance. That's how they refer to it in the show, as insurance. So in that scene, when the bar goes up, it's involving that insurance, if you will.
And Death shows up because the guy fucked up somehow and burned himself to death.
Yep.
The innkeeper. Okay, cool. So, and Rincewind is like, so it's like a bet. And he's like, yeah. And did you sign a policy with that guy? And he's like, yeah, for 1 coin. And he's like, geez. You dumbass. At some point I wrote, it's funny how unheroic these two are.
Oh, yeah.
For a long time, they're just like looking on as there are just piles of bodies everywhere.
Rincewind is kind of the worst, but in a comedic kind of way. So,
yeah. For some reason, Rincewind jumps onto a horse.
Oh, so actually,
and it's a terrible effect. Basically, our main character, Twoflower, runs off on a horse. Like, the horse drags him away. And so Rincewind, rather than, like, having an awkward conversation, just steals a guy's horse.
Okay. So the reason for that is that the entire port that they're in, like, all the buildings except for the tower, and I think where the mayor lives, I've already forgotten the name of the position.
Ankh morpork.
Yeah, the entire ankh morpork is made of wood. And what happened essentially is that the bartender just caused a giant city fire. So they come out of the rubble of it and just kind of like staring at the rubble of ankh morpork. And Twoflowers tries to pull out his camera and gets stuck as the horse starts riding away. So like, I can't speak.
Rincewind.
Thank you. Rincewind has to go after him because he doesn't want to die.
Yeah, I mean, he's just this frail old man with no skills other than the ability to lie and deceive. But there is a very bad horse riding effect that later is a dragon riding effect. So get used to that. It doesn't last too long.
Yeah, the CG starts off with a pretty good like CG giant turtle and elephant. They showed Discworld, and then starts slowly declining in CG quality as it goes on.
So now we cut over to the Unseen University. We get a shot of the Octavo. The spells imprisoned in its pages lead a secret life of their own. And Rincewind, for some reason, leaving Ankh Morpork, has left the spells in a state of confusion. They're worked up.
So the book starts like rumbling and moving around a little bit here and there, and it's causing a bit of a stir.
So now the Arch-Chancellor needs to get Rincewind back so it'll settle down the book. He regrets sending him away.
He regrets it when he realizes that the reason why the book stayed calm for all these years was because of Rincewind, the guy he just expelled from the university.
Exactly.
He says, "I just expelled the guy." They're like, he's the one that caused things to calm down. It's like, I just expelled the guy, didn't I?
Yeah, nobody knows what it did when our guy touched it, but ever since he touched it 40 years ago, it's been chill. We meet Horace, the guy with the funny mustaches. He's the librarian, and I called him, just to shorten it while I was taking notes, Chanso. I don't know if that's a good nickname, but in my notes, he's Chanso. So Horace is the Chancellor's homie. And then we meet Tim Curry, Mr. Tryman. And he has a little bit of banter with Horace. He's kind of a dick. Yeah. He's got some new shoes.
Yeah, as you would imagine.
Oh my God. New hat. Oh, again, this is the hat switcheroo business that we heard about before. And then we smash cut to his about to read a book. It's called Room at the Top, How to Succeed in Wizardry.
When he opens the book, a claw comes slashing down towards him, and it was a fun joke. In the aspect that, it's how their system works, apparently.
Yeah, chapter 1 is the art of surprise.
Yeah.
The knife in the back. So yeah, it's basically a book how to like sneak around and do murders. Yeah. It shows he's looking at the different orders and who represents each order. He's one of 3 over in the corner there. So he's not on top yet.
Right. It shows the hierarchy of the unseen university.
And he learns. Here we learn that Horace is the head librarian. That's the guy with the mustaches. And we learn that Spoghold Grog, is that his name? The next wizard that he's going to target. He knows something about the Octavo.
Yeah.
So he needs to talk to that guy. Oh, no, he finds out the succession. The next person in front of him on the line to Arch-Chancellor is this guy, Spoghold Greg, or whatever his name is.
Right.
Yeah. And turns out Trimon really wants everything well organized. Whatever that means.
It's kind of vague about it, but it does mention the librarian is generally exempt from these assassination tests because no one wants to be the head librarian, basically. And and Tim Curry is just kind of stating, like, if you work with me, you're less likely to be killed, basically.
That's fun. Yeah, it's not a very sexy position, head librarian.
I mean, that depends on. I feel like that's a very subjective.
I'm not saying there aren't people who respect a librarian, but you don't often see the activities of big librarians written up in the newspaper.
I mean, you don't read Librarian Monthly?
Oh, I love that spread.
Oh yeah, who doesn't read? Everyone reads Librarian Monthly.
Mm-hmm.
I get the newsletter every week.
You get the newsletter every week and also Librarian Monthly.
Exactly. You know, stay informed the week to week, and then you get the highlights at the end of the next month.
Yeah. Remember physical media?
God, I feel old. I used to have so many like magazine subscriptions back in the day.
Let's see. So next, Rincewind is trying to find Twoflower. Can't locate him. We see him at a crossroads. He sees one sign that says the Pit of Ultimate Despair, the Dread
Lovely.
Tower of Darkness.
Sounds nice.
One is the Hospitable Temple of Belshab-Thorath. And then he finds one that says the Wormburg and the Palace of the Dragon Lord. And he's like, oh, shit, I want to see some dragons. Everybody will want to hear about me seeing dragons.
Yeah, because he's a tourist. That's the joke. Like, they do hammer that one a little hard for the first part of the episode, which is like, he's a tourist making dumb tourist decisions. It's like, okay, the joke only lasts so long, but I do enjoy it that you're really sticking to it.
And so they've got a couple words we're not used to, hubward and rimward. And he chooses rimward. That's the way to the dragons. We cut over to Rincewind. He's being attacked by wolves. He's hanging off a branch. And Death is there just kind of chilling, having a sandwich or something.
I like it because his line is, you know, I can't hang here all day. And Richardson was like, I can. Well, he's literally dangling over wolves trying to eat him.
I can't hang around all day. I
Yes.
can. So a poison snake or maybe a constrictor, I'm not sure which, is coming over to spook him out that way. The wolves are yapping below. Next thing we see is the purple light again. The Octavo is doing something strange. Oh, it's the purple light in his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Is it like a spell or something? We're not sure exactly what's happening.
It's not been revealed yet as to what that is.
But somehow he falls and isn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
then
no.
the trunk grabs him.
He falls and isn't hurt because of the trunk. The trunk is what, like, the trunk went under him, opened itself up, and allowed him to fall in. So he was saved by the trunk. Yeah, and because the trunk was also there, it saved him from the wolves.
Oh, he hears a voice in a foreign language, and then he says, "Who are you?" And then he falls.
Yeah.
I think the spell makes him lighter because the trunk could be there fine, but he's up 50 feet, so he should have been hurt either way. I mean, it's like gold is pretty hard. I think his spell is Featherfall or something like it.
I think that he, and by he I mean Terry Pratchett, wrote himself into a bit of a corner and just kind of went with it. I think that I know the point of the show is to deep dive. I think this is one of the scenarios that we shouldn't deep dive because the writer did.
Interesting. So there's a bit of a deviation here.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's an explanation maybe in the book series. I am not aware of it. So I'm just going to say don't think too hard, listener, because like the show did not either. So they don't explain why he just survives like a 50-foot drop into a trunk full of gold.
So the box rolls up. He's sitting on it, and he looks at the signpost, and he's like, "Oh, Wormburg. Yep. I don't believe in dragons.
Yeah.
That won't come to anything." Okay, so we're only halfway through the movie itself, so we're gonna have to rush through some of these scenes, I think.
Okay.
There's this wicked cool gear covered door that Sparghold Grog lives in, and Tryman peeks through the keyhole, and then he goes to this fake bookcase, and it looks so good. Do you remember seeing this bookcase?
Yeah, it was a very nice bookcase.
Yeah, it's one of those magic, but I couldn't tell if it's like, I mean, each one of those books, some set designer handmade it or something. It's really good. At first, I thought it might be a painting, but I don't know. It's got a great texture. I wonder if the set designer got an award for this one.
I don't know, but I mean, they kind of deserved it. CG aside, like the set design was done really well.
The costumes are really good too.
Yeah,
Although I don't love the wizard's velvet. I would have liked a different fabric, but that's just me.
fair. And in fairness, this wasn't a movie. It was like a three-part special series, sort of
Yes, you're absolutely right.
three-part TV movie, basically.
So this is when Tryman talks to Spold, and Spold tells him that there's a missing spell, and
From the
that
Octagon.
Spold doesn't know where it is. Tryman's trying to figure out where it might be. But he's like, well, I've got what I need out of this guy, and he knows he has trouble breathing, so he sticks some goo in his keyhole.
Which I guess is his own. I guess that's his only air source. Is the air through the keyhole?
I mean, there's windows in his room. I don't know. Maybe he
Yeah.
lives in a shaft with poor ventilation. After that, there's some time-lapse clouds. And this is where I start to go, this music is kind of generic and annoying. Did you have that feeling at any point?
No, but in fairness, movies and TV have taught me to largely ignore the background music it seems. So I
Mm.
wasn't really paying attention, in fairness, to that. I mean, the music.
There's some really terrible bird sounds in the soundtrack.
It's probably from the BBC like record archives for sound effects.
Yeah, their audio library.
Which you can access online, by the way. They're older stuff.
Ooh, that's awesome. Um, this is where my note: have there been any women in this yet? I meant
Yeah,
like with speaking roles, but yeah.
not really. No, I think at this point there is. I mean, some would eventually come, but they've not really arrived yet.
So we see the big floating mountain. I assume that's Wormberg. Rincewind rolls in on the luggage. And then they have a little talk about like dragons aren't real. And then a dragon comes by and grabs twoflower
Yep,
right out
which
of
is
the
fun.
air. But you can't see it. It's like an invisible dragon, like Pete's dragon.
Right. It's pretty funny, to be honest.
Yeah, there's some good slapsticky bits here. And we get to see that awesome riding effect.
Oh boy, the invisible.
Oh, I meant Rincewind gets on a horse again.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that was also good. Yeah,
he hits a branch and falls down. And there's a magic sword and a stone that's like, hey, bud, get me out of this stone.
and yeah, he pulls it out and kind of like yeah. Sorry, I'm getting ahead. Go ahead.
Well, when he pulls it out, there's this weird moment where the sword says, could be worse. This could have been an anvil. And I have no idea what that means. I feel like that's got to be some weird British reference.
Oh, literally the sword and the stone. In some adaptations, the King Arthur, it wasn't a stone, it was an anvil. He's saying he's not Excalibur.
But, like, what's the difference? I mean, I just don't get it.
I mean, it's literally just a like an Excalibur reference because like in some legends, Excalibur was buried in an anvil that they couldn't move. Uh,
Yeah.
so he's basically saying, look on the bright side. At least I'm not Excalibur. That's the joke basically. It's not super funny. It's more like referential humor.
I mean, I feel like Excalibur is the coolest of all magic swords. Maybe this magic sword is trying to put some shade on Excalibur.
I mean, it is one of the most famous swords in Western mythology. So,
Like, this
uh,
poor bastard doesn't even get a name.
yeah,
What would you call your magic sword?
Ted,
Oh, I like that. Ted, that's
Ted,
good.
Ted the Magic Sword.
Yeah.
That's the whole.
I'd rock a Larry.
Larry, not Larry the Mace. You prefer Larry to be a sword?
Yeah, that's a good point. What about home slice? Because, slice.
Yo, yeah, I'm always down for a good pun. Uh, well, we better cut to the chase, but
Yeah.
I bring smart words, dumb jokes, and
I'm
bad
sorry to
puns to
cut you
this.
off there.
Ha! I see what you did there.
I took a stab at it.
No, I saw it. All right.
I
So he
have to
pulls.
practice my puns when I can because I'm so bad at them.
It's
So,
a. I mean, it's an art form in the aspect that it requires you to be like on your feet for the wittiness. It's not an art in that aspect that it's like the lowest denominator of jokes that I thoroughly enjoy. Uh, but it requires you to like be on your feet when you're willing to tell these jokes. So like I get it. It's practice.
okay, so Horace and Chanso come to see the Sklop, and they notice the keyhole was covered. Sklop is dead.
Hmm.
Sklorp, whatever his name is, Spold, I think it is. And then we see Rincewind fighting a dragon lady with a magic sword,
So yes, I
which was
hate to.
very cool.
At first, he fights her with the sword and he wins the fight, and then they get flown in. No, I think I got ahead of you. Sorry, I got ahead of you. My
He
apologies.
disarms her,
Yeah,
and he's like, "Oh, wow, this is a lot of fun." And then she's like, "Well, we're still going to take you captive or whatever." Or no, he wants to take her.
yes, to find twoflower.
Oh, so he takes her as a hostage to go to her place to get
Yeah,
Twoflower back.
this is the first spoken role by a female in this series. Was this character? Or yeah,
And her name is Liesa,
I'm so terrible with names.
I think. She's gorgeous and has a cute outfit on.
Yeah, it was a. She looked pretty good.
It's just so classic fantasy for the first speaking female character to be like incredibly banging.
Yeah, it's very pulp novel esque from early 20th or early 20th century sword and sorcery like stuff. It was pretty fun, especially from the 80s because there were so many sword and sorcery movies in the 80s. Anyway, sorry for my dad. Please go on.
So the vibe she has while they're on the dragon, it gave me so much Hoshi Sato as the Terran Emperor vibes. Just real like imperious and
And
in command.
and then we see a very much referring to the bad special effects.
The
The
dragon in flight.
the invisible flying dragon.
And then
It
once it's inside the mountain, it becomes kind of reddish. Oh, it's so
uh,
good.
so it's bad, but in an entertaining way at least.
Music, more generic fantasy music here. I feel like the dragon looks pretty video gamey, but still pretty cool. Um, so we get our first lady chat here. She's like, "What is your name, hero?" So she's got the wrong idea. She thinks he's a hero when in fact he just has a sword that's forcing him to be heroic. I thought the set looked really great. It's like stone, but carved to have dragon scales.
Yeah, it was really cool. And on the outside, it looked like a mountain on the peak of the mountain was towards the ground. It's very fantasy novel-esque.
Yeah. So they pull him up and they put on these things they call hog boots that have hooks at the end. We don't know what that's all about. She says, none who enter the Wormberg ever leave again, except metaphorically speaking, of course.
That's a fun joke.
Yeah. So now we see Tryman seems to have killed Glorp, and he chats with Chanso outside his office. New shoes, new hat.
Yeah. And, he gets the comment is like, "Oh, new shoes." Once again, terrible way to run a body of government. Just saying.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Awful. Just truly not sustainable. You'd have to have thousands of new wizards every year just to maintain the hierarchy.
Of course, given the recent news we received a few days ago, maybe we shouldn't be judging too hard because apparently we're not doing it right either. So,
well, we probably should have more representatives and a smaller country physically in just geographic area. I don't know. Plus, I feel like a president is just a bad thing. We don't need. It should be a ceremonial role instead of a dictator.
I mean, that was kind of its point. Not to bore people with old politics, but that was kind of its point. It was mostly meant to be a ceremonial role, but the president also was also the head of the electoral college at the same time. Not the electoral college, of the executive branch, excuse me. So it was meant to be mostly just like a figurehead in general, and then it's just kind of gone up in power since then.
Yeah, I'd prefer a straight parliament with a prime minister. Not that those haven't ever gone bad either.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, our democratic contemporaries over in England had some issues for a few years under their, parliament with the prime minister and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, new shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got them hog boots.
Hog boots. Oh, no.
The tourist is in jail,
Mhm.
and he's thinking how cool it was. He'll be able to tell people he saw dragons.
Right.
And then a fucking dragon breathes fire into his room, and he's like, whoa! And this dragon wants to do what he says. For some reason, it likes him. And so he's like, could you melt these bars for me? And he totally does.
Yeah. I feel like Terry Pratchett wrote himself into another corner. Love the guy's writing. It's great writing. But
like, how is this dweeb going to get out of this jail cell? Oh, I know.
Exactly.
Free dragon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is he a secret dragon lord? Next, Tryman goes into the Arch-Chancellor's office, and he sees his hat on the ground. And so he's like about to start gloating, and Arch-Chancellor walks out.
Yeah, the reason for that is because in a previous scene, off screen, you hear a trap go off whenever Chanso goes into his office.
Yeah, and he kind of shouted awkwardly.
Yeah, so the presumption in that scene is that he was attacked, and then by this scene, he's like, "All right, cool, I'm Arch Chancellor," and then Chanso comes out. Yeah.
And he's like, on your way out, could you clean up that spring axe trap that some prankster must have put there?
Yeah, you can tell he's being very glib about it. He knows who did it. He's not. He's not denying. He's just like, you tried killing me.
Yeah, Tim Curry is so understated here.
Yeah, I think this is the area where his mental issues started arriving, so that's why he's a bit more muted than he has been in the past.
You mean the actor in real life?
Yeah, okay, so
Mm.
I don't know the timeline of this fun side story. Tim Curry had to stop acting because of a mental decline of some kind. I don't want to
Oh,
speculate on someone else's health, but that's literally the reason why we don't see him today, even though he's still around. Um,
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, so Ricewind is hanging upside down with his sword, and the way they shoot Liesa, I mean, it's too much, man. Too hot.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's like, I got this magic sword. It's not fair. I'll definitely beat you. And she's like, hey, I have one too. And it talks too.
Yeah, that's a
And yeah, they're hanging upside down doing some sword fighting.
and throwing and the swords are throwing shade at each other, just talking bad about each other.
I've seen sharper butter knives.
Exactly.
So
Fun
they
little
fight for
reveal
a
there.
while, and then he loses a hook, or it like falls off, and then his other one breaks, and so he's hanging from her like just hand to hand. And they're having a little chat, and he's what, hundreds of feet up. I'm not even sure how far up he is. And she's like, "Could you maybe not let me die?" But eventually he drops, and Twoflower and the dragon come flying up and catch him.
Yep. Which once again feels like Terry Pratchett trying to write himself out of out of a corner. But it's not a full on criticism, to be honest. It is funny, but it's also like weirdly convenient.
Right. I mean, he set it up a scene ago, I guess 2 scenes ago,
Yeah.
um, with the dragon. Yeah. The magic system isn't very persnickety in the Terry Pratchett
Oh yeah.
situation.
All over the place. I For reference, you can like something and also be a little critical of it at the same time.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
of course. I mean, Brandon Sanderson has all this great lore around his magic systems, um, but they aren't this fast paced and super silly and like just jolly.
right.
Um, let's see. Rincewind is talking about what he doesn't like about being on a dragon. He says it's not the actual falling, it's more the hitting that bothers me. And he dropped the sword.
Yep. Very conveniently lost the magic talking sword. That by the way, he cannot use a sword, but the sword could fight for him. So he just
Hmm.
conveniently lost the magic sword that allows him to sword fight.
Yeah, so this is like almost like Terry Pratchett going, it's not as much fun when Rincewind,
Is
like,
competent.
yeah, is competent. We need him to be knocked down a peg again.
This reminds me, I'll make this part very quick. There's a series called Journey Quest, and they have the same general presence of like a sword who can control people's arms to fight, sword fight, and then a competent wizard who builds it. It's a pretty funny show. Check out Journey Quest sometime.
Oh, Journey Quest is amazing. Yes,
Yeah, they have the same
absolutely.
general. They just kind of like expand upon the concept of an incompetent wizard with a magical sword excuse me, a magical sword that allows you to sword fight.
You know what's wild is the
Hmm.
wizard is played by an old friend of mine, and the role playing game that me and him played together was the basis for the one that I use on my podcast, Shattered Worlds RPG.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so fun how like when you play a homebrew game, it can sometimes inspire whole worlds and new games. And yeah, I've written like
Nice.
almost 6 books now about it. Like, yeah, it's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, Christian also did some directing, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm not like an expert in that
I
area, but I know he's done stuff with Zombie Orpheus.
Zombie Orpheus
Yes,
Entertainment. Yeah,
yeah. He's directed a few things there, and
I think he
he's
directed season 3.
that sounds about right. The budget for that one was higher, but the special effects were not as good as season two. I don't know, but it was
Mm.
the first. The seasons are really good. I've enjoyed the series so far. It's just been a long time since the last season.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Labor of love. Like the smaller independent media. I mean, we know, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
we'd be happy with 20 followers. These guys are trying to do things that cost real money,
Mm-hmm.
like require big. Like I think they were the first sort of Patreon or what is it called?
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter, that kind of thing that I ever took part in.
Mm. Yeah, I actually took part in their Kickstarter for the Pathfinder version of their Gamers 2 campaign, The Mask of
Oh, that's
Darkness.
cool.
Yeah, it was a Kickstarter for that. I actually got like free material. Well, not free because I Kickstarted, but I got material on how to run it. It was definitely worth it.
That's great. Okay. Let's see. Um, where was I? I dropped the sword. At the edge of the world, the Krullians are still hoping to learn the sex of the turtle. They have a
Yep.
cool ramp and a purple coated guy asking about the cello knots. They have 12 hours until the launch to find a couple of sacrifices. So they must stick slaves in their machines. We
Right.
see Rincewind and Twoflower. They're drifting close to the edge of Discworld. We're going to run out of world. Well, I definitely want to see that.
Yeah. Twoflower, I need you to get your priorities straight. You're about to fall off. You're no world. Like from there is space, and I don't think there's air in that version of space. Just saying.
It's like when you're on vacation, the thought of dying is just not on your list. You've got
I
too
have
much to do.
I Jeff, I have no idea what you're talking about. The thought of not dying on any vacation is always on my mind.
No
I,
shit. Oh, that's not fun.
yeah, and it's in my day-to-day life as well. Like I've explained to people, like I don't believe in the supernatural, but if there's like there's this like hotel where 12 people were murdered 50 years ago today. I'm not going in there. I don't want to be the guy the guy who's proven wrong in a horror movie, you know?
Yo, I don't go into ghosty shit. I don't I don't fuck around with that. Life is scary enough.
Yeah. I don't believe in ghosts, but I also don't provoke that shit. I don't put that shit in my life either in case I'm wrong. So I'm just
My
hedging my
brother
bets.
my brother and his friends dragged me to an abandoned house in the neighborhood once, and
Absolutely not.
it was spooky as hell. There was like kids artwork on the wall and like a brace, like a crutch type brace thing upstairs, a
Absolutely.
mattress,
No,
graffiti. There was like jam
no,
jars with preserves in them. It real
mm-mm.
freaked me out.
No, absolutely not. None of that. Sorry. I In every horror movie, there's one guy who's like, ghosts aren't real and is the first to die.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to be that guy. I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm not gonna fight that into my life in case
Yeah.
I am wrong.
Hey, you know what I've never done is
Uh,
say Bloody Mary thrisely into a mirror. Look, I'm not in this mirror. I mean, my hand is in it, so maybe I should play it safe.
I mean, Jeff, it makes you plenty better. I can't see the mirror, so for all I know, you're telling nothing but the truth.
Yeah. You can just see my hands in this mirror from here.
And what happens? Why is the mirror? What's the mirror? Excuse me. Why is the mirror pertinent
Well, if I
to
were
what
to
you're?
say Bloody Mary thrice,
Uh-huh.
say,
Uh-huh.
then something will appear and like eat me or something. I don't know. But I don't fuck with these spirits and demons and
Uh-huh.
ghosts or whatever, even though they're probably not real.
And why can't you say that word?
I don't know. Some myth, some legend.
Is it was it Bloody Marin?
You motherfucker! How dare you? My hand is just severed at the elbow.
So close.
No!
So close. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So Horace is coming to see the Arch-Chancellor. Tryman blocks him in the hallway. He goes in. Oh, no, he keeps him from going in. So the Chancellor is sleeping. There's an anvil up over his head, and it's got a rope and a candle. Horace smells the burning. The Chancellor wakes up confused and worried. The anvil drops. But before we can find out how that went down, Tryman has dragged Horace down to the octavo. And Horace says that after Rincewind touched it, he never won any exams after that.
Yeah. Also, I believe in that scene, Tim Curry says something along the lines of like, the head chancellor is going to be sick very soon.
That's right. He's going to have been quite ill soon.
Dude, yeah, it was a great, great turn of phrase there.
So now we're on this like obviously fake outcrop of rock with like waves just splashing over it, and Twoflower's resuscitating Rincewind. And once he saves his life, he's like, "Hey, let's hug." And Rincewind is like not into it. He does not want to hug.
We did skip over one thing.
Oh, yes.
As they're flying through the dragon, for reasons, what started, I don't entirely remember, but the dragon just suddenly disappears. And when asked about it, I think it was Death said, "Well, you don't believe in them anyway." So that's why they fall and hit the water and are heading towards the edge of the Discworld.
So this is why I'm again guessing it's a Featherfall spell, because he fell a mile and didn't die when they hit the water.
It's this magic spell called Plot Convenience.
Plop Convenience.
Plot Convenience, yes. Very well done. Bravo.
Because they're in the water.
Yeah. And sort of when you edit this later, it's sort of clapping, like make it like several times.
Good I could do like a whole crowd, like a sea of
like applause,
pleased listeners. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're on this outcrop. Rincewind doesn't like hugs. Twoflower convinces him to see the bright side of things, and then they go to shake hands. And I realized that Twoflower is a bit Doctor Who-y in that, like, he's not quite right. He's a little off kilter. He's not, I don't know. He's like, he's confident, but he's like, if you want to shake hands the regular way, fine. If you want to do a weird, like, back and forth deal, that's fine too.
He's basically like the perpetual tourist throughout this entire like episode. Always just kind of a little out of place in some aspects.
So he's like, why don't you do some magic? And Rincewind is like, I only know the one spell. I got it when I touched the octavo.
You get a flashback.
And this interesting quote where he says, "It's settled in my memory like a toad in a stone." And I don't understand this analogy.
That's beyond me. I can Google that real quick. The toadstone is alluded to by Duke Sr. in Shakespeare's As You Like It in 1599 in Act 2, Scene 1, lines 12 through 14. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel on the head. So basically, I think he's insinuating that, well, apparently William Shakespeare exists in the world of Discworld, but also that it's the jewel that sits in the jewel's head is the spell that sits in Rincewind's mind.
Oh, fascinating. So yeah, they got Shakespeare on Discworld.
Yeah.
So it's either like a Beatles situation from that one movie where like the lyrics come to a visitor, like a tourist or whatever comes and sings their music, or Shakespeare himself went there in a sort of sideways time travel visitation thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a parallel evolution where there will always be a Shakespeare in a humanoid culture.
Could be. Oh, and unfortunately, Google provided an AI overview. The analogy of a toad in a stone is used in literature and folklore to refer to the idea of a living being trapped in a solid rock, which still
Oh.
works either way in either explanation that I have mentioned so far. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the basic idea. Like it's with him always, and it's a weight on his mind. I think that's the gist of what he's saying. And apparently, like you said, Shakespeare exists in multiple universes in some way, shape, or how.
Yeah.
I'm shrugging. For the audience at home, I'm shrugging.
Well, you know that Spider-Man series, the animated one where it's like a multiverse?
Oh yeah,
You see a bunch of different Spider-Mans.
Spider-Man's
That'd be so great if it was one like that, but with Shakespeare's. There'd
into
be
the Shakespeare.
elephant Shakespeare and a robot Shakespeare and a spider Shakespeare.
Yeah, into the Shakespeare. I understand what you're talking about.
There'd be
Yeah.
Boston Shakespeare.
Yo, to be or not to be, huh?
Hey, forget about it. Oh, that's Jersey Shakespeare.
Just
Uh, oh, we got to stay on task here. Let's see. They marvel about the edge of the world.
understandable.
A rope shows up and he's like, "Oh, that's the circumfence." And the guy's like, "No, it's the circumference surrounds the Discworld." And he's like, "Also a circumfence."
Yeah.
And the circumfence drags like another rope with a boat on it. It must travel near the circumfence.
I love the line. Like, look, I should know. I desperately need to should question why this boat has showed up, but we need to get out of here. I love that line.
He's like, this is probably a trap, but the less said about it, the better.
Yeah, I just love it because it's like it's Pratchett calling himself out at that moment in a pretty like self-aware humor. You know, I was like, I should be questioning why this boat is here, but let's get out of here.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a one of those cranks on a train, which I thought was a
Mhm.
good choice. I don't know if it's like that in the book, but here it's really cool. It's like one of those westerns where they're jogging the crank up and down to go on the track. We get a quick
Right.
shot of the trunk running across hill and dale to get to them. We see him cranking their boat. Next, Tryman sees the Arch-Chancellor alive to his chagrin, and Chancellor is making this big-ass arrow. He pulls out a bow, and he does something to the mirror.
Oh, this was a separate chancellor. It's one of the other chancellors, but he is making it an arrow. Uses the mirror to get a picture of um, our lead, whose name I keep forgetting because my short-term memory is not the best.
Rincewind. So
Thank
he
you, Richardson.
aims, and he like adjusts for temperature and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he shoots, and the mirror fogs back up. And the arrow itself is like a missile. It's going over mountains and shit. It'll take a while to get to him. But the whole point is that when it kills Rincewind, the spell that was given to him will leave his body and travel back on the ionized path and into the Chancellor.
Right.
He and Tryman banter about the 8 spells and what one could do if they have all of them. Tryman's like, "What could one do?" And he's like, You're going to have to figure that on your own. And he's got a dagger, and he's about to stab the Chancellor, and then there's a knock at the door.
Yeah, it was great.
Horace runs in. He's like, "It's the Octavo. It's going really ape." Going ape. What's next? So the spells in the octavo are restless, so they have some kind of mind of their own. Horace opens the door to show the Chancellor. I don't think they go in.
I do not believe so.
Just to kind of talk about the danger, and then they close up the door and leave. Back on the ocean, our homies have arrived at the town of Krull, which is where that ship is being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Some people with spears, a black lady named Marchesa, and she welcomes them, and then at some point slips that they're sacrifices.
Yeah, it was like, we're not going to kill you. Oh, good. We're going to sacrifice you.
So again, we have the unfriendly host. I feel like this is a trope. The woman, is she's always got a ulterior motive.
Yeah.
But they escape. Rincewind somehow just beats everyone up. None of that made any sense.
Not in the slightest.
And the big chest jumps into the water. So it'll, I guess, be going under the water until they get to their side. They're trapped on this island. The tourist pulls something, and then they're in this room with like planet statues, star systems with moons and things.
Right.
The tourist is loving it.
Right.
It's like an observatory. You can see all the stars above.
Two flowers. I need you to get your shit together. Now's not the time to be gawking. You're in very immediate danger.
I don't know, man. I feel like he hasn't got to gawk enough. Here we are at a legit museum type thing.
I'm not saying you don't gawk. I'm saying there's a time and a place to do what he's doing. You just kind of take it as you go because you're going to be sacrificed. There's a time and a place, man. Like, I know
Rincewind is not looking forward to whatever's coming down the pipe. He's like, maybe we should put these outfits on. But before he can even tell dude the plan, these two guys come in and bonk. They knock him out, possibly kill them. We're not sure. And they wear their space costumes. We cut over to the arena. We get a shot of the ship on the top of the ramp. Let's see. The vehicle's all ready to go. The purple coat guy gives a speech. And he talks about how they have these highly skilled chilonauts to fly down and look at the turtle's junk.
Because he's really obsessed with finding out the gender of a flying space turtle.
Yeah, the great Atuin.
Right.
So our spacemen come out. Crowd's loving it. They're all suited up. And we get a funny joke from Rincewind. He says, I just think I need to boldly go. And he's talking about pee.
Yeah.
Or maybe poo. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's like, do you think these outfits have bathrooms built in or something like that? And Two Flowers, like, I don't think so. It's like, well, I need to boldly go. Just implying he has to like use the bathroom. It's pretty good, and it's a funny reference to Star Trek.
So he says the purple coat guy says they're heroes not just of Krull but the galaxy. And so they're slowly walking towards the ship. They still don't know what's going on. I don't think they can hear with their helmets on. So they're just friendlily waving. And the octavo is screeching as it's realizing they're about to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the purple coat guy is realizing that they might not be the legit ones, so he's sending guards out to intercept them. The wizards see the purple special effect come out of the octavo. It shoots up to the ceiling, and it goes up every floor, out the top of the university, into the sky. And then we look over, and Horace has been turned into an orangutan.
Yeah, it's exactly what he is.
And he waves.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Nonsensical. Like, there's no reason for him to be in orangutan.
Oh, poor guy. I wonder if they can turn him back or if they won't even bother. So the guys arrive at the ship. Goons are pursuing them. Twoflower gets to the top hatch. He's trying to open it. He's having trouble. Rincewind is totally not into it.
Yeah,
But the guards and the Chilonauts are coming, so he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. Twoflower gets stuck in the hatch. So talk about cartoony. His legs are poking out.
right.
There's a countdown going. What do you think of countdowns in fantasy and sci-fi?
They're just to build suspense for the scene. At this point, though, it's such a used cliche that it does not affect me for the purposes of building up suspense.
Yeah, it's gotta be tweaked somehow. It can't just be, the music swells each time it goes down one.
Yeah, it was literally just I've become numb to the concept of countdowns and for building suspense. So it's like, all right, I see what you're trying to do here. Let's just come on now.
So the wizards see the octavo purple thing arrive, and it creates a facsimile of Atuin and the Discworld and all that, and mist starts pouring down out of it, and then out the windows, and you can see the whole town and all of Discworld is getting all misty. And so they keep going up to higher levels of the tower to get out of the mist.
Yep. They even said there was a joke about how many steps do we have to go through? It's like 8,888 steps that they have to go up to. It was pretty funny because it's
Yeah.
throwback to like, unnecessarily complicated towers from like D&D and other old fantasy novels. It's funny.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it also means that wizards have to be physically fit.
Oh yeah, they've got gams. Wizards got gams.
I feel like they should install an elevator. I feel like it should be ADA compliant.
I mean, yeah, they should be ADA compliant, but for the ones that are not physically impaired, they needed to get the steps in. All they do is sit there and read books. They're not getting in any cardio. That's their only, Jeff. That is their only cardio.
The cardio is important,
Yeah,
definitely. Let's see. So there's a countdown. Twoflower's trying to get inside the hatch. The ship is about to go, and then they see a new star out in the sky. And Twoflower, before he goes down into the hatch, he's like, "The whole damn sky is full of worlds." Thought that was a
we
good line.
yeah. It was like we should name that star. That's what Two Flower says. We should.
So the ship goes down the ramp. He goes inside. The hatch seals, and our boy Rincewind is still on the ladder. So as they go into free fall, he's just sort of loose, floating behind the ship.
Right.
They drop. The ship turns a bit, and your boy Twoflower can see back at the turtle, and the arrows coming, the luggage. And then the arrow, I guess, because they went off the end of the earth, the arrow turns around and goes back.
Yeah.
The Arch-Chancellor says the only way to know what's happening is to perform the rite of Ashkente. He says the mist is a change spell created by the Octavo. The whole world is changing for the better, I think. I think Tryman says for the better, I think.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Travis is for the better.
He's got his dagger with him. Arch-Chancellor, just shoots a bolt behind him. Like, could you stop trying to kill me for a second? I'm trying to do this right.
Oh yeah, that was great because he's went to go attack. I mean, just like magic bolts him away from him. It's like, give me just like a second. And he goes like
Mm-hmm.
throw the knife at him. He just catches it midair with magic and just like flies it elsewhere.
And
I was
instead
like,
of killing Tryman, he just knocks it into the ground in front of him.
yeah. This is the first time we've seen a wizard do magic in this hour and a half episode, by the way. This one scene is the first time we've seen magic.
So he goes, the whole world is changing, holds up his hands. The arrow comes back, shoots through his hat. He goes down to pick it up. And Tryman says, for the better, I think, and then pushes him off the parapet.
Yeah.
And then he smiles smugly, and we see all of Discworld. We see that star burning in the distance. This is where the ship is spinning, and we can see the turtle's butt. And the tourist is looking out the porthole, and he says the new star is so pretty he should name it. And Rincewind thinks that it's pointless because they're going to be dead.
Yeah. Ever the optimist, that one.
All the other wizards come up to the balcony to check out this new star. And they're like, where's the Arch-Chancellor? And Tryman turns around. He's like, you're looking at him, motherfucker.
Yeah. Verbatim. Jeff quoted them verbatim.
He says, and how can I help you? And puts on the Arch-Chancellor's hat. I thought they were going to loop back around and land near the turtle's junk, but instead they just keep going off into space. They seem to be headed towards the new star. Rincewind's floating out there, and he says, I'll give it a name. Goodbye, world. And they're on this collision course, I think. Or are they going past it?
They're heading towards it, basically.
Yeah. Man, I want to see part 2. I want to know if they hit that star.
Yeah, because that's the end of part 1. There's one thing we did forget at the scene in which they're standing at the Rim of the World and they're staying over. They're like, "Wow, this is all really beautiful." This moment. Rincewind turns to Twoflowers and says, "You see that 8th color? That's the color of magic."
Oh, how did I go past that? That was like we should have done party horns. They said it.
They said the thing. They said the title. It's okay. I literally forgot until just like a minute ago. I was like, oh yeah, that was a really good scene. Like the characters had to be serious for a second, not be super goofy. So yeah.
Yeah, that was right before the boat rolled up. We see the rimbo, the color of magic.
Yeah. That's actually explained in the book. It's one of the first things explained is that the color of magic is like the 8th color because magic relies on like color and stuff like that. So that's what the color of magic is. It's the color of magic is the 8th color in the rainbow.
All right. Well, we made it through the chronology. Were there any things that just glared bad to you? Big plot holes? I mean, I feel like there can't be because Pratchett just said, hey, look at all the silly stuff happening without explanation.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I genuinely liked the first episode. It was pretty good. The jokes, the references, they were great. Because you tell Pratchett's a fan of not just fantasy, which is what he's most known for, in fairness. But he's also, like, you see a bit of sci-fi here and there, and it was just great. I really enjoyed it. I did have some critiques if you listen throughout the episode. I don't know if you noticed, Jeff. Relied a bit too much on block convenience at times, but at the same time, maybe that was a commentary because especially in the 80s, there was a lot of like sword and sorcery movies, and they also relied heavily on plot convenience. So, and the CGI was horrendous. Oh boy, that CG was horrendous.
Oh, at points, yeah, it's a little rudimentary.
The turtle in the beginning episode was actually pretty good, but it's just like it declined in quality CG wise as the as the episode went on.
I guess
Now
the
that
more you got to see it.
the budget went to the turtle. Uh, but that's not a critique on itself. I've enjoyed bad CG throughout my life. One of my favorite 90s movies is the Mortal Kombat movie, and no one thinks the CG in that movie was good. Boy, howdy, was that bad.
Because you've read this one, I have a question. The jokes, are there not as many in this? Were they delivered less funny? I feel
Uh,
like there weren't a lot of big laughs.
so I didn't get to finish the book because the narrator, I was using an audiobook at the time, and the narrator spoke in a way that just wasn't clicking with my brain. I had to listen, I had to like back up a few times. So I got so far, basically to like right as they have to leave the city. That's where like I stopped listening because it was just getting hard to do it.
The
Um
city of ankh morpork.
that yes. When they left the city right around, like I think I'm good. Um but in the first act, as a comparison to the first couple chapters, the jokes are a little bit more spread out through it.
Oh, so
And
he's not like Douglas Adams, like shooting them at you rapid fire.
yeah, no, it's his. I mean, it is in the aspect that his characters are meant to be quirky. It's not in that like it's a joke every other sentence, you know. Um,
Yeah.
his stuff is Douglas Adams like, but it is not entirely Douglas Adams. You could definitely see a different writing style. Uh, I will say that his characters are meant to be quirky, and that's sometimes the joke. Two Flowers, when he's first introduced in the book, the scene goes on a bit further with how inept he is at speaking the local language and how heavily he relies on that translation book. That's kind of the joke for the first several chapters when it comes to Two Flowers. So
Yeah. Is it the same director for both episodes?
I do believe so. I believe it was directed and written by our man Vadim Jean or Jean.
Okay.
That's probably French. No, well, he's an English director, so Jean. Um, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
was kind of wondering if they might have another director because, yeah, sometimes comedy just, some directors direct it better than others. But yeah, maybe it's just the material. It's not a funny ha ha. It's more like, oh, isn't that droll? It's
yeah,
kind of NPR level
it's very
absurdity.
it's NPR level with an occasional like quirkiness. I will say Death does show up several times just to comment like at the scene where they're standing over the edge of the Discworld. It's like, don't mind me, just enjoying the scenery or something like that. Death shows up a few times throughout that first episode. Um and there's something wonderful about Christopher Lee, playing such a deadpan character in such dangerous moments like that. It was really funny. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it's definitely like, it kind of tickles you. It's good. Um, I'm sure that as an American, it may not entirely appeal to me at the laugh out loud type of funny, but I still enjoyed it as a comedy regardless. I just wasn't,
Yeah. It's
I just
got
wasn't
memorable characters. I hope to see the patrician again.
right.
But he might be gone though because our boys have left Discworld entirely. So
Um,
we'll find out maybe when they get back.
Rinswin is a fun character. I would hate him as a real person, but as a fictional character, he's at least entertaining,
Uh huh.
because he's a coward through the start thing. At points, just like, I need you to not be a coward for just like 5 minutes. Come on, guy. Um,
Yes. Who also can only do that one spell.
yeah, we're still low to. I did watch a bit ahead on episode 2, but they'll allude to more in that as the series progresses.
Okay, cool. So on IMDb, people gave it 7 out of 10. I
It's
don't
pretty.
really want to look at bad reviews. I think it's good. I
Yeah,
think I might watch this one again.
uh,
It's got charm, I think
yeah.
is, yeah. It's
Uh,
also
it,
got that super hot dragon lady.
Uh, if you have a moment in the episode, there is a section on the Wikipedia page about the differences between the text and the book. If you want to go over those real quick, because
Yeah, let's do that.
although the film generally remains true to the original novel, several scenes and characters were removed or merged with others to bring the script to a reasonable length. Noting that there wasn't a time for everything, because there was a lot of characters in the book. The producers cut completely the scene in the Temple of Bel Shamroth, which is coming up, and an associated plotline about the significance of the number 8. Director Vadim Jean defended the decision, saying, "We could have gone there, but we went with the Wurmberg instead." They were There were time constraints, and we could have gone one way or the other, so we went with the whole hog on just one. The scenes of Wurmberg were themselves shortened and simplified, reducing the character of Liort, which by the way is spelled not apostrophe, excuse me, exclamation point O-R-T, L-I exclamation point O-R-T, to a cameo, and losing the character of Cassandra, which repeats K exclamation point S-D-R-A, Grisha and Frun completely. So those are some of the characters that were in the book that were not in the adaptation. I do like that he uses the exclamation point in the middle of these names, because if you've ever read a fantasy novel, fantasy novelists love to use
Apostrophes.
apostrophes. Yeah, it is
Mm-hmm.
like a cliche that not everyone notices, but once you do, you'll always see it. Um, the inter-wizard rivalry at Unseen University, by contrast, is expanded and spread out through the film. While the novels, the sequences are short and mainly found in the Light Fantastic, which is another series. This established Trigon as a more easily recognizable antagonist.
So this is a thing that happens a lot too in early books. Is the antagonist is kind of not really a thing as much.
Yeah,
There's not as much like direct human drama necessarily. It happens in the Expanse as well, and TV
yeah,
and film just demands conflict. I like that they made Tryman this. He's constantly working.
right. To avoid the necessity of
Okay,
explaining.
I think we should skip this section because it's got spoilers for the next section.
Okay, fair. In the
So in the book, Rincewind never attempted suicide, whereas in the film version, he tries to take his own life by jumping into the river Ankh. His circumstances of spotting the luggage are additionally different. In the book, he spots it while sitting in the broken drum, while in the film, he spots it while being carried up from the river Ankh on an empty pallet.
Yeah, and in the book, Twoflower was toothless and wore dentures. In the film, Twoflower's teeth were his own. That part doesn't really add to anything, so I can see why they removed it. To be honest, even in this
Yeah,
scene, it didn't really matter much.
everybody
Right?
has to be prettier in TV and film. Sean
Yeah,
Astin has good teeth, why screw it up?
exactly. And yeah, that was the first episode of the 2008 the Color of Magic series. So, Jeff, if I may ask, I mean, this is your show, but what were your thoughts on this episode?
Oh shit, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I love the dragon stuff.
Yeah.
I love Liesa, the dragon lady.
Mm.
I really love the arch chancellor. I love that arrow missile. Um, yeah, it's really the visual stuff. The jokes were okay. Death looked cool.
Right. Good costume design for Death.
And the sets, man, those
Oh yeah.
sets, matte paintings. Um, yeah, it's the kind of world that I could I'd comfortably visit once a year, probably.
Fun note, by the way, on that similar note, if you want to get to be a fan of it, they do have a whole book series for Discworld, right? But recently, Modifius, the game development company, actually released a Discworld RPG.
We should look into that.
Yeah, maybe we should be playing it on our other show, Omniversal Escapades.
Yeah, it probably uses the Modiphius 2D20 system, which I know well from Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah, and I'm at least familiar with from Star Trek Adventures and the Fallout game that we ran the
Yeah.
miniseries of.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
Let's see. What else? MVP, your favorite main character.
I mean, it's hard to beat Tim Curry. But if I had to give it to anyone besides Tim Curry, it would be Christopher Lee, just because even though he was only in a few scenes, he's not super relevant to the plot, and the fact he's chasing after Rentswin the entire time, his just one-liners are always great in a scene. So I'm gonna have to give it to Death, which apparently
Yeah.
Death in the Discworld series is a pretty popular character, so I guess I'm part of Team Death for that one.
Nice.
Uh, I can see why people like Death in the Discworld series. What about you? Who's your favorite character?
It was the Dragon Lady, of course.
Yeah.
She was great. She didn't have many lines, but man, she sold it.
And the reason why I chose this is we talked about it in the last episode of Omniversal Escapades, and I mentioned like I want to do something Terry Pratchett because like I genuinely enjoy his writing, even if it's not always with the laugh out loud laugh. Right, it's very charming and witty, and you get chuckles out of it. Um, we discussed doing a few, but the reason why I said Color Magic is because it's another series. It's like I want to get into. So it was good like co-watching this with somebody uh when you're like enjoying the first episode, you know.
Heck yeah. Well, if you'd like to continue on this, come on back and we'll carry on. What do you think?
That sounds good. Yeah, we can definitely go ahead and move on to episode 2. And yeah, sounds like a fun time.
Hell yeah, I will be in touch. Before we wrap, let's talk recommendations. Have you been enjoying anything in the last week or two that you think somebody should check out?
Um, hmm, that was a good question. I work day to day. It's a lot of my time. So
I mean, you can expand that out to a month, two
fair.
months.
Um,
What did you talk about when we started? Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
Aladdin,
yeah.
Hercules,
Uh,
X-Men, Spawn.
I'll be honest. Cut this part out because I'm still trying to like think. It's give me a little bit of dead air. Um, not a lot.
Omniversal Escapades.
Yeah, sure. I honestly, I do not have a whole lot going in my life right now. And I'm kind of just, when it comes to shows, popcorning shows, you know, the stuff that's like good popcorn junk food shows. Not, not, not reality shows. I've got more taste than that, but, um, just whatever popcorn show I can watch. So, uh, what I have been enjoying genuinely with my friends is Omniversal Escapades. Thank you, speech impediment. I get to hang out with great people. We have fun. We make jokes. Everyone's very creative in that show, and y'all have done some weird things that I had no plans for. Like I, I literally in the first season I planned out a lot of beats. I didn't like force you into the beats. I just had them ready to put into place. And then this season, I'm just kind of rolling with the punches, and I have some general plot points. I remember like listening to the Adventure Zone, and the first season was very tight, and the second season was less tight. And Griffin McElroy was just like, "Yeah, I'm just kind of going with it now." I was like, "You know, Griffin, I completely understand." um,
Yeah. Trying to control the three of us would be a losing proposition. What I love is that we're all very deadly characters, but we really don't want to kill anyone if we don't
right.
have to. And so that gives us a lot of fun opportunities for goofery. Like I got
Yeah.
into a fun, sexy fight with a guy named Beetle.
Yeah, you got an effect with Beetle, and one thing I liked about the first series is that there were times I thought you were going to get into fights. There are times I had planned fights, and you managed to get around without ever having to like get into the fight. The only exception to that was the fire possum scene in which you go, I didn't force it on you per se, but the drama of not actually wanting to destroy them, I felt really good and said a lot about your characters at the time because like we didn't want to fight them, but we didn't see another way. Um,
Yeah, I mean, if a bunch of dogs came to your town and set buildings on fire, you'd probably have to kill them, So it's no
yeah,
no difference.
and I really like that scene. So it's been a fun ride, and I don't try and control you all. I've just been planning slightly less, basically. I've been dialing back the planning, and it's been fun. Um, because you all are a bunch of fun players, to be honest.
Hell yeah, great show, great show. I have been reading tons of books. I'm currently reading Zeta Major, which is a Fifth Doctor Who book. Fifth
Okay.
Doctor, he was the one played by Peter Davison,
All right.
and it's got like continuity where they go back to a planet that the Fourth Doctor went to, but much later, and there's like monks that also have tons of power because they're in the religious hierarchy, and there's tech, but there's also carriages. It's a lot of fun, but it's out of print, so you can only read it on Internet Archive. So that's
Okay.
not a very good recommendation. So I want to pitch The Good Doctor, which is a 13th Doctor book. I'm reading it now, and it's very good, but it has some odd parallels with something that's happening right now,
Hmm.
which is the invasion of Gaza and Lebanon by Israel, which I was not expecting to get into in my family friendly 13th Doctor episode. But it's very well written. I recommend it. It's called The Good Doctor.
Nice. Um, if I would recommend anything to a person is to go ahead and check out the Discworld series. I've been told to actually skip to the third book in the series, but if
Oh,
you're like
really?
me, yeah. But if you're like me, you have to read things in chronological order, regardless of people say, because you want to know the inside jokes of the next books. Start with The Color of Magic, the first book in Terry Pratchett series. Or if you wanted to get an idea of what the character's like, go check out Good Omens, the TV show or the book. Neil Gaiman co-wrote that. Maybe find a different way of reading the book if you can that doesn't send money somewhere. Um,
Yeah, what do we say? Scandal noted.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
it's a good
Um,
series.
Another series kind of like that is the Dresden Files,
Mhm.
where like if you really want to know Harry Dresden, start at book one. But if you want to skip the two like kind of weirdly misogynistic or at least like embarrassing first two books, go to the third, and that's where the continuity really kicks off. Um, but yeah, it's people's first novels can be kind of sloppy,
Yeah. Oh, for
you
sure.
know. So it's
Uh,
fine to skip them if you want.
in a similar vein, I would genuinely suggest to check out the Witcher book series. The
Ooh.
Netflix adaptation, I couldn't get past the first season, but what I did see was fine, but was not entirely faithful. But do not start with the first book. Start with The Fatal Wish, which is a series of short stories that the creator made. It expands upon the world and the characters that exist within the series. It's great because the books have like magic and time travel. Unfortunately, there is like magic eugenics, but this is the 80s and people still believed in that kind of thing. And he's from
Oh,
Poland.
of
He's from
course.
Poland. Yeah, he's from Poland. Of course, he believed in it. Um, but there's like magic eugenics that's the problematic side. But there's like time travel and openly gay character game by characters and
Oh, cool.
yeah, it talks about some of the issues that women deal with in their world. I will like there's a note there, and this was meant to be a big note. One of the characters does get SA'd I cannot say that.
Ah,
Yeah,
yes, that's an important
that
content
it
warning.
it happens in like the second or third book. It is a plot point. It doesn't have a lot to do with it. I'm not going to forgive the writer for that, but I'm going to understand that he was writing with what he thought would be this is a terrible thing to happen to somebody at that time. It was a very common
Right.
plot point back in the 80s and 90s. So it is not good. It is very much of its time, but it is genuinely well written. It expands upon our world because at one point it dips into like Arthurian legends and how like our two worlds have like coincided with different legends of each other that each one thinks it's their own thing. The lore is pretty good. It's yeah. I'm not gonna talk it up further, but yeah, it's a pretty good series. I do genuinely suggest it. But the side note that it's a little problematic because it's very much of its era.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. I'll definitely check that out. And listener, if you have any ideas for stuff you'd like to see us cover, if you know any podcasters that have covered something that you think might want to come over and chat with us, let me know. The podcast email is great and secret knowledge. Is it? Yeah, great and secret knowledge at gmail.com. Let me double check that. Can you vamp?
yeah. So whenever you're
It's
wanting,
great and secret knowledge at gmail.com.
and that's how I vamped throughout that entire thing. Jeff actually just probably cut that out. There was a good like 5 minute vamp that I did, and then Jeff cut that out at that moment. So if you're hearing this now, it's because after I do my 5 minute vamp.
It was some of the best stuff you're ever going to hear anywhere.
Thank you.
Sadly, it was lost forever.
Yeah, it's I had a whole theory on how we can stop different wars throughout the world, but it's fine.
Yeah, it would have been really helpful. Now I've even forgotten it. And so, I don't know. Do you remember it?
I mean, I can bet for another 5 minutes if you want me to break it up again.
Okay, I'll make sure the recording's good. Okay, let's go.
All right, so the key, uh, it,
Oh man, that was so profound.
I know, yeah.
How do we end this thing? I don't know. Sometimes we say a quote from the show. Let me see if I could find a good one.
Oh, look at all the stars. Look how pretty they are, or whatever the line is. I totally screwed
Oh,
up that.
yeah, there's so many worlds.
Oh yeah, no, quote the line because you wrote it down, right?
Yeah. That's near the end where he's poking out of the machine. Um, the whole damn sky is full of worlds.
The whole damn sky is full of worlds. That's a great way
That's
to end
right.
that episode.
Good night, everybody.
Make
Thank you,
sure,
Dean. Thank you for joining me.
please leave 5 stars on the podcast platform of your choice and follow and leave a nice review for Jeff.
Yes. Oh, that's what I forgot is to plug us everywhere. Tell
Yeah.
everyone if they like the book Piranesi, if they like X-Files, if they like The Wizard of freaking Oz. Those are what we've done so far. Plus this, we're going to do the Bartimaeus trilogy, John Carpenter's The Thing. We've got all kinds of stuff on deck. So stay tuned. How do people find you, Dean? I know you talked about it up front, but what's the best way to find you?
Real quick, does does the show have any social media that you need to plug?
We have a Facebook page, but we haven't done anything else yet.
Fair. If you want to find me, why? You can do so at Geekisdean on most platforms, except for on TikTok. I'm barely on there, but that's at Internet Putz because I'm exactly that. I don't make a lot of content, so I just refer to myself as the Internet Putz. I just do things on the internet. Um, Otherwise, you could find me on Omniversal Escapades with Jeff, plugging again for like the fifth time, with Jeff and our friends Az and Tess. We have a great time. We're currently doing like a Wild West situation a Wild West campaign taking place in a world that happens during a post magic apocalypse. So
Yeah, that's on youtube.com/Omniversal Escapades. And then at 6:30 usually every other Sunday, that's Pacific Standard Time, we're on Twitch.
Yep, twitch.tv/Omniversal Escapades.
Hell yeah. And me, you can find me everywhere at El Jefe Tacoma or on my Shattered Worlds RPG Twitter at SWRPGpod. And listen to Shattered Worlds RPG, and everything is awesome. I sometimes do shows over there still, interviews and things. And Omniversal Escapades, of course.
I do have one last
show. It's the best show you haven't listened to yet.
Thank you. Everyone in that show is really nice. We've had so many good guests. Our hosts are great. I have a good time. I do have one last thing to plug, and then I'm good. I'm sorry, dear audience. We're living rather tumultuous times. Get a little real with everyone. And sometimes I feel the need to express myself pen to paper. In this case, it would be keyboard to digital platform. On my Twitter at Geekestein, there is a brief, like maybe page and a half Medium post that I made called Refusing the Gray. It refers to how now is not the time to steep in our anxieties and depression, and to take this time to recover from the recent election, and then come back and make sure that we as a society do not allow the terrible things that are coming to happen. It's very brief. I don't go into a lot of details. It's more just like expressing some bad mental health that I've had, and then refusing to fall back into those. And I'm going to use that same kind of fuel to make sure I do not allow myself to sit too bad into my current bad mental health with the elections. So if you want something that's sad but a little inspirational, maybe check it out.
That's fantastic. And if me on my personal page, you want to send me a message to plot revolution, to go underground, to join a foreign army, just hit me up. Most of that'll obviously have to happen with like paper airplanes, or I don't know what spy people do to avoid the fascists, but we'll figure it out.
Tin cans with strings connecting them.
That's right. Yeah. Drive by my house, throw a newspaper with your email address. I'll connect with you. A huge thanks to James Lark of jameslark.co.uk for providing our wonderful theme song. Thank you, James. Welcome back. Oh, man, I just bonked my tea. Hold on.
And this is the point in the audio where you place your commercials here. This episode is brought to you by Warby Parker, and I don't wear glasses. Oh, wait, Jeff's not here. Jeff's going to enjoy this joke later. So yeah, it's brought to you by Blue Apron or Apex Shadow Legends. Choose your choice. Me undies. All right.
Thanks for vamping.